Good morning, everyone. This is David McFadden, Mayor of Tuxedo Park. It is a special meeting, May 24th. It is 11:04 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor McFadden.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shaw. Present. Trustee Brooke.
Present.
Trustee Casker.
Present.
And Trustee Sherrill.
You're muted.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I was aware. Present by Zoom.
Okay. Let's open the public comment section. Let's start with people in the room.
I'm, first of all, thank you guys
You're welcome.
and girls. I'm running myself into something that's none of my business, so please bear with me. My question is, I don't understand why this particular investment is really attractive.
Right.
If you look at it, I should give you two things. The first sheet compares the yield as reported by your class and one thing compared to federal funds, and which is daily funds. Federal funds. And you look down that.
I'm so sorry, can we, I just want to make sure people on Zoom
Can you hear him, Josh?
I hear him well enough.
Can I step
Okay.
forward?
No,
Yeah,
we
go-
or we have the mic, whichever.
Okay.
You can sit here and also identify yourself.
Okay, hi, Alan.
Thank you,
Barnett.
Elizabeth.
Okay, so compares the New York, the yields reported by your class to the federal funds rate. Federal funds rates, of course, is just, daily rates. And as you'll see, there is no, except for three months, the federal funds rate was higher than the yield your class was earning, okay? Second question is, the next sheet, this is their report. They're showing a return on $10 million at April of $38,626. They report the April yield at 4.7285, which would mean they should have that's a $47,000 return. And the federal funds would have been, end of April, would have been about the same. So it would have been 48,000. So $10,000 more than they're saying you would have gotten. What's that $10,000?
Okay, so I don't know if you're apples and apples with their publication. I'm not saying you're not, but I didn't notice that. We didn't ask that question. However, I think Josh is looking at it now. And Paul, does anyone,
Yeah,
Josh and Paul? or-
I'm
would you like to
happy
comment?
to just provide my perspective generally. So was it Alan? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, Alan, thanks for bringing it up. My initial reaction was candidly the same as yours, which is, aren't there better alternatives out there, right? I don't manage money, but my entire career has been on Wall Street. I did have a few conversations with people that do manage money. I think if you look at the current yield on the New York class portfolio, which is a diversified portfolio, by the way, which, as you know, has benefits. I think the current yield is 4.85%. We could take our funds and say, optimize them, quote unquote, by going and putting them into, for example, a closed-end fund, JP Morgan Prime, as an example. We would get 5.15%. Okay, yep. You could go to Goldman Prime, you could get maybe 5.05%. Yep. So there's incremental benefit. Here's the issue, and that was my initial inclination. Is like, let's go there and let's optimize and let's get here's and those funds are accessible, by the way, in those ETFs. Here's the problem: is what I found out is, as a municipality, we're obviously subject to restrictions that we as individuals aren't subject to. And New York class, and unfortunately I'm not fluent in what those restrictions are, but New York class, and I spoke with Michelle Lindsay via email. She's commented there. I think the town of Tuxedo is using them. Town of Monroe's also using them. I think what we're getting here is basically a comparable, we're getting three things. We're getting comparable returns. I think we'd all agree that the difference between a 4.85% and 5.15% is de minimis, right? So you're getting that incremental, or that you're getting a slightly reduced return. We have access to our cash anytime we want, no transfer fees, nothing. In a JP Morgan Prime, and you know, I think there's some of us that might argue that JP Morgan's probably a better credit risk than the U.S. government right now. But you are taking very specific entity risk, whereas in your class we have a diversified portfolio. But also we can give them our money and basically close our eyes. None of the trustees become sort of active managers, and none of us really are qualified to be active managers of saying, oh, today, you know, JP Morgan Prime makes sense. Oh, tomorrow Goldman Prime makes sense. Oh, maybe we should just put it into treasuries. Like, for us as individuals to be calling those types of shots, I think is candidly inappropriate. None of us have the background to do it. So you're basically handing this to professional managers that are qualified by New York State, have been validated by other municipalities. And what are we giving up? Maybe 20 basis points, maybe 15 basis points. So, you know, I came into it, Alan, candidly, exactly where you're coming from it, which is, who are these people? Never heard of them. And I've done the diligence. Hopefully that's evident. And I'm confident, candidly, that this is the right way for us to go. And, you know, part of me was like, why hadn't we done this earlier? The reality is we haven't left that much money on the table, just given that, you know, Fed fund rates have only been increasing over the last, call it 8 to 9 months. And prior to that, you know, we weren't leaving that much on the table, but I think it's prudent to be doing it now. The one caveat to all of that is I do wonder, before we take our funds out of Chase and give them to New York class, let's just let this government default drama play out.
I agree.
Would be my
that was my next point.
Yeah, that
I
would be
agree.
my recommendation. So like
agree.
I'm eager to start earning some interest, but I think we would all be immediately terminated if we gave if we gave it to New York class.
In addition, the New York State Comptroller and the state regulates New York class. It's essentially the only comprehensive thing available on the market to municipalities, and they are across the United States. So the other thing, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Josh, some of these other private investments, let's say, don't have a little bit of a longer term on the investment that we would require. We require instant access to cash, and they are only based on short-term investments. As long as we put in our needs, for example, let's say tomorrow's payroll. Today, we would put it in by a certain time, have that money free up. And more importantly, Josh, there's no minimum.
Okay, let me reply to that.
Please.
All right, two things. One, I'm comparing them to federal funds rate. Okay, federal fund, daily fund, access daily fund, federal funds. Okay, and okay, absent default, but 100% guaranteed by the United States government, whether that's where. So I'm comparing at the most conservative rate you can. One, two is there's a $10,000 difference per month on their own fund, in their own records. I mean, they're saying in April they yielded 4.7, and they would have said you'd have gotten 38,000 and $10 million. 4.7 is $47,000.
So Alan, we don't have 10 million, just to be clear.
No, that's the number they use.
I understand, but I just want to be clear.
Okay, so
when you say 10,000, it seems like it's a bigger number than what we're actually dealing with.
Use $1 million. I think you've got $1 million.
We've got three. We've got three. So
$1 million is still
as $1,000.
$1,000. So what's the difference? Secondly, with federal funds, there is no risk. With their portfolio, which is a mix, there is some degree of risk. Now, there may be a little bit, but they got commercial paper, they got so you are assuming some degree of risk.
They do have insurance. Did you get a chance to look at their presentation?
Did I?
It was at the last meeting. It
Right,
was
yeah, right.
it was about a 15 or 20-minute presentation. It was our second.
Okay.
And I did an announcement and asked everyone, I begged them to strongly look at it. Now, I'm not sure that'll answer all your questions.
So the third comment is,
Mhm.
is the alternative, Joshua, I was looking at, been compared. I was the treasurer of the library for a couple of years. When I became treasurer, we had funds that were sitting there, not getting 500,000, I think, or so 600,000. So Chairman and I went up with El Reyes and looked at and said, hey, how can we do better and safer? And Tamer, who is an investment guy, we put us into structured investment in with Vanguard and layered in the fixed income portion of that into several categories to meet exactly the point you said.
Mhm.
So there was one at 30 days, there was one at, I think, 90, 180 days, and there was one at a year. So that was, and you would get, if you did that, you would get a return in excess of the federal.
So, Alan, I think it's all fantastic. You're talking about a private entity though versus a municipality, and there are, again, I'm not fluent in them, but these investment holdings have to be collateralized as required.
The library.
Yeah, but that's not a municipality, right? So it has to be these have to be collateralized.
It is. It's a municipality.
Yeah, it is.
It is part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
what sort of funds were we talking about?
500, 600,000.
So, I mean, listen, we're happy to explore
let me-
that. Go ahead.
Josh, let me make, the issue that arises here, why we call this special meeting, is because we felt that the capital we had could have a better return in a more productive vehicle,
Right.
just as you did in the village. And I had JP Morgan stuff, Josh and I talked about it, and we felt that these were good results. They were not optimal because we could have had, we could have more yield. The thing is, Josh and I talked about it, is this is no cost going in, no cost going out. Okay? Therefore, if we commit to doing this, we will start earning this higher return, which is municipal protected, bespoke for what our purposes are. And the moment we come up with a better structure that doesn't require supervision of a trustee or whatever, we're happy to go in that direction. The question before us is, do we take that capital and put it into something that's higher yielding than we currently have? Right? If at some point we want to change it to a different thing, which we haven't done the research on, which is more unique. It's not, here you've got the protection of a lot of municipalities doing it. And they're charging 12 bips. When I looked at Vanguard, they might have charged 5 bips, right? So a different of, a couple of basis points. But the answer is, the first question is, do we commit to a higher yield? And we do that. And if you want to make a proposal that we can review and whether we go to, exactly what the library did, I'm more than happy to consider it. But,
Agreed.
the first step is, let's just get it to where we're getting a higher yield in the interim, because it's safe and it's basically in the research. And if it costs us a couple of basis points, I'm willing to pay for a bespoke service.
I agree with all of that. The only other thing I would say, Alan, as you know, when you're looking at yields, you have to look at them on a net basis. What you're seeing here with New York Class is a net yield. And the structuring, I'd love to see the structuring you and Tamer did at the library, but it sounds like there would be structuring costs associated with that. But again, there's
No. You go to Vanguard, you
but
say,
Alan, but let me just finish. I think, please let me finish. So if you listen to what Paul said, I agree with him, which is right now we are not getting an appropriate yield.
Right.
This is maybe, in your view, not optimal. I think the jury's still out, but putting this in to New York class, there's no cost to go in and there's no cost to go out. So, but we would be getting significantly higher yields than we are currently achieving.
And what we talked to Chase about,
If
what they would offer our banks.
Thanks, David. If you have ideas on how we can maybe get another 10 basis points, another 5 basis points, another 15 basis points without, restrictions, and it applies with New York State municipal law, we're all ears. But right now, the decision is to put it into a higher yielding instrument than what we currently have.
all I'm saying is, you tell Chase, I want to buy, you got $5 million always number. I want to buy $1 million. I want to put $1 million in federal funds instantly available. I want to buy $4 million, split the other 4 million, 2 million in 180 days, and the other 2 million at a year, and that's your split, and your combined yield is the total of those yields, and it shouldn't change.
We'd love to see the proposal, Alan.
Oh, that's my proposal. But I don't want to.
But it's not a proposal. You're saying that's how you do it. Somebody's going to manage it. We are unwilling to manage it. We are seeking a higher yield in a structure that's safe. This seems to be safe. There's no in, there's no out, and we can change it anytime we want.
Okay, this was a fun conversation. You guys have thought about it. I rest my case. I mean, my only point is, this is not as safe as you think it is.
Alan, stay there. Can I go next?
Well, of
I got more to add to this. My background, I started trading long bonds at Salomon Brothers, managed money since 1992. And I think Alan Burnett has a point here. And I'm glad you're here this morning. This is not as safe as you think it is. JP Morgan Chase is too big to fail. Prime Trust is not too big to fail. JP Morgan Chase has 36 billion in a similar, if not better, structure. These people have 1 billion. All right. These people have a weighted average maturity of 21 days. JP Morgan Chase, 4 days, which means that if half the people wanted to get out tomorrow, you will not get your money out. You're going to have a Silicon Valley Bank issue here if you have a run on, these people, the New York class people. You're getting, and I brought something for you, David. Here we go, Tinka.
Did you get a chance also to look at the presentation?
Yeah, it's a good presentation, but he doesn't go back past the financial crisis when everybody gated all these things. All right, they're going to block redemptions on you if they get a run. This is JP Morgan Chase. All right, and Trustee Scherer, you had a good idea. JP Morgan Chase is much safer. They have a $1 million fund, a $5 million minimum, and a $10 million minimum. Full disclosure, I'm in their $10 million minimum fund. Yeah, it's very safe. They're safer than the U.S. government. They're too big to fail, and they have a weighted average maturity of 4 days and not 21 days. It's better in all ways. You're getting a very similar yield, and we really should not be looking at 10 basis points more, 10 basis points less. The real issue here is counterparty risk. who's going to go bust on you in the next financial crisis? And you don't know when that crisis is going to be. Is it going to be next week because the government can't get their act together? Or is it going to be 3 weeks from now because China invades Taiwan? Who knows, right? You never know when the next financial crisis will be. And who is more likely to go bust? Is it,
I mean, I don't know, because if you look at the S&P rating, New York class carries a AAA rating, as does JP Morgan.
I understand that. Will S&P pay your money when they go bust?
And the United States government debt got
And
Downgraded,
and New York and United States debt is double A. But my only point is,
you guys have thought about it. You make your mind up.
Let me
No, we're-
respond to Claudio's, let me
Happy to
respond to
listen.
Claudio's thing.
There's a better, safer alternative, and that's called JP Morgan Chase.
Right. So I've got the data you presented. I look at April. There's the agency piece. The yield is 4.61.
Yep,
There's the premier piece. The yield is 4.43.
yep.
Fed funds is 4.83. And New York class is 4.73.
Look at the
So to-
7-day
Please.
SEC yield is how you need to.
I'm looking at the numbers, right,
Understand
from
that.
my perspective, and I don't want to spend too much time. I'm more than happy to think about ways to enhance our yield and enhance our safety. They're both critical to what we're doing. And in that regard, I believe we should approve going into this today so we can start and we can proceed to evaluate the pluses and minuses of both of these things you presented. The agency, what's the difference between agency and premier?
One is a $1 million minimum, the other is a $5 million minimum. And I figure you have a 2.5 million average balance every year. 2.5% gives you $125,000 a year.
Yeah.
But
So we don't meet the 5 million.
it's just to show you in case you do have a 5 million. You can get in at 5 million and draw down and still be in that.
yeah, but we don't
We don't
have five.
5 million.
I mean, we just
We
don't have
don't, we
five.
don't have 5, so
Not yet.
we're gonna
Are you
take,
smoking?
from my
Eating cigarettes.
perspective, the yield at the fund that we're appropriate for is 4.43 versus 4.7, 4.8. And I would be hard pressed to say that, the JP Morgan thing is materially safer. It may be a little safer, but it's materially safer than what we've done. My sense is we make a decision and we should consider over the next month or two whether we switch it to the JP Morgan Chase. Right, the problem is in anything is if you extend, you got short-term yields, which means the yields can go up and down a fair amount depending on what happens in the government.
So can they, so.
Right.
Trustee Brooke, in all due respect, money market funds need to be compared. It's called a 7-day SEC yield.
Right.
And the 7-day SEC yield to these funds is much higher than New York class because New York class has a lagging 26-day average life. So they invest 26 days out. These people invest 4 days out. All right. So as yields go up, I mean, we've already left $40,000-$50,000 on the table by not starting this earlier. All right.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse
As
me.
yields go
Excuse me.
up, you've
Excuse
got to
me.
get that 26-day tail.
Yeah, we're willing to take at this
So
point.
look at the SEC 7-day
We're
yield.
willing to take the 23-day risk from what we know. We will be happy to consider the 7-day risk and the penalty to yield. But, we're dealing with, we can get a higher yield or we can get a safer yield. So there's a diversity of opinion about what we do.
Also, I'd like to just comment on that. We've already left all this money on the table. We decided that we would finish our financial statement for the year, make sure that we had all of our numbers in order before we would go willy-nilly and start putting money in that we may or may not need or not have. So that's really not a fair.
In October,
And
nobody
also-
was looking at
and-
No,
this.
no need to argue.
And I'm sorry, it also requires public debate, which is what we're having right now. I mean, it
Right.
seems to me like if we had just gone and dumped this into some instrument that, you'd
I
probably.
mean,
I have
with all due
a-
respect, trustee Sher, nobody looked at this last October when it rates started going up, right? Right now they're at 5%, 9 months later, we left 9 months of interest on
If
the
you were
table.
looking at it, why didn't you bring it up?
I mean,
Why didn't you bring it up? Why didn't you bring it up?
I'm one of the
Michelle has
largest.
her hand up.
Thank you.
Michelle Lindsay has her hand
Michelle
up.
is.
Yeah, we've been looking at this much longer than that. Why didn't you bring it up to us as a resident of the park with goodwill?
I don't think we should be pointing fingers. I mean,
Yeah, really, let's
we're
not point
trying to
fingers.
get to what makes sense. We had a lot of
Mhm.
issues to deal with. Right, and we're trying to deal with them.
But I have a question
Michelle?
for you. If we were in this JP Morgan fund, no, and who would make the decision on what to invest in terms of whether it would be the short term or the medium term or the long term items that are available?
This is the same structure as this.
What would it
They
be?
have-
Right,
How
but
would
the,
the
an-
board be responsible?
the answer to your question, Mayor, is we as trustees would be actively having
Right.
to manage this
No,
fund and
so as-
adjusting.
that's not
So
true. That's
as
not
the
true. Trustee Chair, with all due
Excuse
respect,
me.
Trustee Chair,
Sir.
that is not true. These trusts
Sir, please.
have
Some
a
decorum.
have
Order,
managed.
please.
Thank you. You're not saying the truth. You're not telling the
I'm
truth.
not, I'm asking a question.
You're asking me a question about this fund that I brought
Please.
up.
We
Please.
now have 3 items on the
All
table.
right, I'm asking a
Just a
question.
The trustees will have no active management of the JP Morgan funds. They have fund managers at the funds.
Right, so if there's a point in time where somebody felt like the mixture should be changed of what we own, what we purchased to put our money in. And we wanted to go to our representative at JP Morgan and suggest that. Is that a possibility? We could tell them, okay, so in that case, it would require the Board of Trustees, the fiduciaries of village money, taxes, to then have a debate and determine, for example, I might come in and say, you know, I think we should move a little bit of our money over to this fund
No,
or
no, no,
this.
no, no, no. that's-
Or move
excuse
it to move it to Vanguard.
Excuse me, if I wanted to move it around, it's just a simple question. If I wanted to move it around, would I have to get board permission to move it around?
You're not going to be moving around. This is a short-term fund. That is a short-term
But
fund.
There's a blend, you said.
But
Okay,
wait,
explain
but
no,
it.
hold
it's
on,
not.
but
No,
hold on,
never
but
said that.
Claudio,
Never said
like
that.
real question. So what you're saying is we take this money, put this money in JP Morgan trust funds. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Okay. It's readily available to us at all times. There's no transfer fees, access
Yep.
at all times.
No cost, no
And we-
nothing, same.
and I understand. And we can close our eyes as trustees and just say, great, we'll see you at the end of the year.
Correct,
And we don't need to optimize because Vanguard suddenly
no,
has a better
correct,
fund or anything.
correct. It's the,
I'd love to see this in writing. Like,
You're-
that would be great.
you're getting the same, and I'll send you what I distributed here. You're getting the same treatment with a better counterparty risk. You're getting, instead of a $1 billion fund, which is really teeny as far as money market funds go, instead of $1 billion, you're getting $36 billion, and you're getting someone who's too big to fail, and they're not going to shutter redemptions on you when the going gets rough.
So you're saying it's a fact that if we wanted to change the blend of what we had with JP Morgan, we would just be able to do it without debating, without voting.
Right.
And we would be able to then tell our advisor to do it, or would the advisor do it without our approval?
There is no advisor, just like these
So
people will.
how would it
just-
take place?
Just like these people, you can't change the blend of their short-term instruments, which are mainly reverse repos. This is the same type of structure. Those people, they have a diversified portfolio where you can't ask them to change the blend. This is a short-term money market fund, just like this. This has a 26-day average maturity. That has a 4-day average maturity, which means that if everybody comes in and runs on it like Silicon Valley Bank, you're not going to get your money out for 26 days, right? There, it'll take 4 days. Push comes to shove. And who's going to go bust earlier? These guys or these guys with financial? Probably no one, but JP Morgan Chase is too big to fail. Where New York class might not be.
It's about the 5th time you've said too big to fail, and there's a whole book written about it. There are a lot of places that are too big to fail. I don't think money market funds are the places where the failures take place. With respect to the decision before us, Michelle has a comment. Why don't we hear Michelle's comment?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi. So, I just want to correct, I don't know if it was clear. The town is considering this, but we haven't committed yet. So I am exploring many of the questions you've raised today and will report back to the town board. So I'm interested in your conclusions, but one thing that I did take note the other night during the presentation is Chris, I believe his name, said that commercial paper is not available to municipalities as an investment tool. And so I question some of these other liquid investments, whether commercial paper is included. So that's something like even Vanguard. So we'd have to look at that. And certainly I want to talk to other municipalities. I've talked to Supervisor Cordone in Monroe, but I feel that I need to check a few more. The concern from the town board is about the lack of FDIC insurance, but our balances are over 250,000 anyway. So I'm not sure that that needs to be considered so highly. I do want to look at other alternatives first, but we have to go by the guidelines of what New York municipalities can invest in.
Right, Michelle, can you share some of those alternatives that you've looked at?
I haven't yet. I mean, since you brought it up on the meeting on Wednesday, I discussed it with the board, or I'm sorry, it was last, I can't remember when you had it, but yeah, it was last week, right? I brought it up to the board on Monday night at our meeting, and they want me to report back. So as soon as I do, I have to go to the state comptroller's office and talk to them because of this commercial paper thing that many, liquid funds have. So I need to get some feedback from their office as to why they've approved this. They obviously are keeping a close eye on all these funds. So I just want to get some feedback from them.
Yeah.
And I'll share that with you as soon as I get it.
Right.
And I guess that's kind of it right now. I mean, we're still in the exploring stage, but it just seems the commercial paper, the insurance, and also one other thing about Chase that I do want to just make the board comfortable with, the town board, is if we drop our balances below a certain threshold, are we then getting fees from Chase for all of our transactions? That's kind of like when you have a personal account, you drop below a certain amount. I think we have the
answer to that question.
Well,
Oh, good.
Well, not really. I did ask that question and I never really got an answer from Chase.
But they did essentially say if we're below
Yeah,
certain
if
balances,
you're below certain, and I
they'll start
asked,
charging us for those.
right, and I did ask specifically, well, what would the fees be if we're not at a certain thing? And they flew me off.
Right, we didn't get
And then I
specific
heard-
numbers, but we did
Okay.
get the promise that there would be.
Right. So what's the threshold? What are the fees?
Mhm.
So I'm going to present all of that to the town board. Our next meeting isn't until the 12th of June. So we wouldn't be able to make a decision until then. So
Right.
I kind of see in these next 2.5 weeks as my exploratory time.
Our next meeting is June. Oh, no, is it June 21st?
Yes.
And when's yours, Michelle?
The 12th
The 12th.
of June. Yeah.
All right, well, I'll make a suggestion to the board. I wouldn't mind working with Michelle and her investigation, and I wouldn't mind looking further into some of these other alternatives. If our next meeting is the 21st, certainly it's frustrating that we could be losing a little bit of money. But, and this is really up for debate amongst the trustees. I would be willing to table it until we get more information. But I'd like to do a round with the trustees and see what they think. Chris?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Michelle, for the comments, and Josh for providing so much background, and Paul for comments as well. And of course, Tinka, I know you did a lot of legwork with John as well. I think there's some hesitation here because this has kind of been sprung on everybody. And I did some research last night. Sorry, it was last minute, but we are required to have an investment policy and we're supposed to renew it every year. And I think if we had this debate around policy and then determined what tactics we could take to institute that policy for investing, then this would be probably a little bit of a smoother conversation. And I think the big concern is the risk with pulling out of a bank that's FDIC insured. And part of the research I saw last night is when you exceed $250,000 in deposits in the bank has to collateralize it because we're a municipality. So it has to be surety bonds, and there's other avenues that they're supposed to have as well. And they're supposed to provide us that in writing every year. So and one more concern is I think in the spirit of diversity, we should not be putting all of our money into New York class. We should keep it in multiple accounts. But that being said, long-winded answer to agree
And
with
that
the
goes back to your
mayor
policy.
that
matter.
I think I agree and support tabling this for a month. And I wouldn't mind spending some time working on the policy. And it's actually written. There's a draft,
Right.
it's Appendix B in the general municipal law. We just have to tweak it. But it gives us in compliance with where we're supposed to be anyway. And then it can be published and then debated, and then we can make investments.
Yeah.
You know, and I just look, I get it. There's interest that we could be earning, but it's not money we've lost. It's not money we haven't made yet. It's not the end of the world to make sure we do this right.
But well, I'm gonna go finish with my table discussion. Paul, what are your
Well,
views?
First of all, again, I have here before the JP Morgan Chase, and as I look at it, it says the annual expense for $1 million fund is 44 basis points. The expense for New York class is 12 basis points. So the reason this yield is lower is because they're charging a bigger management fee.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is not free in, free out. There's a management fee that we're considering. With respect to policy, okay, I'm more than happy to formalize something, but we have basically said we want to invest our money in a higher yield, safe entity. Okay, New York Class 1 is a higher yield. It seems a safe entity. And my sense is we should move to do that. Now, what Josh said is not until we had a budget compromise, debt ceiling expansion. And I don't know when that's supposed to take place. Josh, do you have any idea when?
I mean, it has to happen by the beginning of June. I mean, otherwise we're out of cash.
Yeah.
Can't pay our debts.
So my sense is the decision is contingent upon the end of June compromise. Right? We can make a decision now, but it doesn't get executed until that takes place. So my sense is we should commit to a higher yield entity, that the timing of it should be post the budget compromise. And that because this is.
Which budget compromise? The federal
Federal,
government
yeah.
budget, that compromise?
Yes, the debt ceiling.
Compromise.
Good luck.
Yeah, well, that'll kick the can down the road. It's not new news, and that,
I just want to
and that we as a group will agree that we will consider on a quarterly basis whether there's a better investment alternative than New York Class 1, which is no cost in, no cost out.
Mhm.
I don't agree with the policy of separate accounts. I mean, $3 million is just not big enough to do that. And maybe if you want to put 500 where it is and leave it where it is and do 2.5 million here, it's fine. But my sense is we should approve a commitment to a more productive investment of our cash post the federal deficit, kick the can down the road. And that we consider whether in fact there is a better entity for us to consider, at subsequent, be it June or July meetings. And we do it from there. I don't want to wait, kick the can down. I mean, there's a simple decision, and it's I don't think.
I don't think it's a simple decision. This is public funds and this is a fund that's not guaranteed. I don't think it's a simple decision.
When you say it's not guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed in life, Chris. This is a AAA rated institution, just like JP Morgan.
Well, it's
There's
not
no
insured.
There's no,
Not
there's no,
insured.
what's that?
It's not insured. It's not collateralized.
Neither is the JP Morgan fund. I mean, it is collateralized. It's backed by repos and treasuries and others. So when you say collateralized, it is collateralized.
Our money right now is collateralized and insured in the bank.
At what level? At the 250 level?
It's
So there's
250.
and there's
It's supposed to be. We're supposed to be checking this. It's supposed to be, it's guaranteed at 250, then everything above is supposed to be collateralized with surety bonds and other venues. That's according to the New York state law that I'm pretty sure we're following.
And I'm pretty sure New York Class 1 is following New York state law. There are too many municipalities involved.
Yeah, it is collateralized, except it's
So it is
collateralized by
collateral.
higher yielding instruments.
But let's try to bring this issue to
Well, I
Before
think
we
we're,
do that, I'd like to.
I think we're going around to the various
Yeah,
trustees,
but-
correct?
Yeah, would you like to take your option now?
Sure. First, Chris, when you say this was sprung upon you, I guess, this was presented, New York Class presented at last week's meeting.
Yep.
And that was on the agenda. I know you couldn't make it, but this has been out there for at least 10 days. So I just want to throw that out.
Yeah, I got it. I meant these things usually simmer for weeks and months, and let people develop thoughts and do research and public comment. 10 days isn't a lot. And this meeting was, I think you could agree, was sprung up. But anyway, not the point. Let's get stay with the issues.
There was a presentation last week, which
I
you
watched
missed.
it. I watched it.
So my view is
One more thing, Josh, since you interjected that. Last meeting, we discussed making this decision in a month. So I had plenty of time to do research until the special meeting came up.
and I think where the reason for that is fairly straightforward. You already heard from Claudio suggesting that this decision should have been made back in October. We recognize that we're effectively leaving money on the table every day that goes by, which leads me to where I come out on this. I think this we have a much better alternative in New York Class than how we're currently investing our funds. It may not be the best option. Alan and Claudio both had some interesting ideas. I'd love to have that conversation and hear more about them and absolutely explore them. But in the meantime, I do think we should put our money with New York Class. Again, once there's been a budget deficit agreement, so that we can at least take federal government risk off the table, which, to be honest, I think is de minimis. I don't candidly see our government defaulting, but we've seen plenty of things happen in the last couple of decades that we didn't expect to happen. So including, by the way, major financial institutions vanishing in front of our eyes. So when you talk about too big to fail, I'm not sure such a thing exists. So anyway, that would be my proposal. Invest after we have an agreement in place at the federal level.
Stating that we would invest, we would use New York Class
Correct.
at a certain point in time in the future, based on certain circumstances. And have we decided what blend of how much money we would put in? Or would that be a decision we would make in another resolution when we decide that the federal government has defaulted and we're now going to move forward with our investment in New York Class? In other words, would we be putting in 3 million or 1 million or all of our cash?
I mean, my proposal would be all of it.
Uh-huh.
I would concur with that.
Tinka? What's your view
Yeah, and I agree.
with Josh and Paul? Uh-huh. Chris, do you have any comments
I
based
don't-
on what you've heard?
I don't support 100% investment And I would like to make sure that we're following the law. And I don't think even Josh has admitted he doesn't know all the rules. I don't think I support this.
So
now.
I think that, personally, I think that we could take the time to investigate your comment about the law. And if there's a specific resolution that's required, I don't want to delay this and find out that there isn't, other than what Paul said, which is we're simply stating now what our policy is, and that's a higher yield instrument than that we currently have, and miss out on those days. However, I would be willing to do it, but if I would be willing to wait.
Isn't that something easily resolved if I reach out to Brian?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I would, my preference though, if I could put in this caveat, would be to not make the decision now about putting 100% or 50% in, but agree in concept that we would invest in this organization, New York Class, pending the result of the debt ceiling discussion. But at that time, we would pause to make sure that we have all of our legal ducks in a row.
No, let me suggest.
And let me just finish. And then also determine the amounts that we would use. I think that is a legitimate debate. And I'm not questioning your judgment. You're certainly much more experienced than me. But I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I mean, I think the first question is, since you say, Chris, that you think we are not following the law, we're breaking the law.
Oh.
That, just a second, that strikes me as a very serious comment. And therefore we have to go to council and say, are we breaking the law?
Right.
Right? We want, that council should be able to have that opinion quite rapidly before June. Okay?
Yeah, I don't,
So
it
if-
sounds ugly to
no,
say it
no,
that way, but
no, but
we're
you're
required by
saying-
law to have a policy.
You're saying
That's-
something that,
Yeah,
that we need guidance on, and you did use the word, we're breaking the law.
okay.
Did you not?
I don't remember.
Okay, so the answer is, step one, go to Nugent
Mhm.
and say, is there an issue with respect to our investing in higher yield instruments?
Mhm.
And what is our responsibility? Number two, I think the resolution should be, we commit to investing in higher yield instrument,
Mhm.
post the budget resolution,
Mhm.
right? And you
That
know,
we're not breaking the law.
well, but that's a necessary,
Right.
not sufficient condition,
Right.
right? A resolution increasing yield is another necessary, but
Mhm.
not sufficient. A separate question
Mhm.
is what percent of our capital should we commit to this
Mhm.
fund?
Mhm.
And that may be a question that we can do, you know, we can poll the board at that point, once we find out that
Right.
it's legal, right?
Mhm.
And the question should be, you know, a poll that is somewhere between 50 and 100%.
Yeah, I think
We-
that's really encapsulating everything that, all the concerns we have.
That's it.
And before we move on with further discussion, I know you had wanted to say something.
One point. I was never talking about the Chase fund. I was talking about having Chase invest directly into US securities. And I would gain advantage by layering out the investment. So I'd say, all right, some is 30 days, some is 180 days, and some of it is a year, but they're all invested in US
Mhm.
securities.
So the entity that you used in the library, right, however that
Yeah.
was done.
Right.
Having that person provide something to us is something that I would embrace completely.
Except it's irrelevant. It was Vanguard funds. And the Vanguard and the library.
I'd like, you know,
Sure, fine.
we looked at Vanguard for what we
Fine.
did.
But secondly, compromise solution. Why don't you take some portion in your class and then take 300,000, 200,000, whatever, and tell Chase to buy you 30 days federal
And
funds.
then-
What's your second?
Yeah.
You see what I'm talking
Well,
about.
I think that's what we just left the door open to do.
But the answer is, you're asking us to make decisions
About
no,
what?
about where the, you know, where the money is invested.
I'm talking about with the federal government. It's invested
no, no.
with the federal government.
But Alan, let me ask a question. So it comes to you in a, it comes,
With the federal government is an issue, then we're all in deep shit.
Well,
but it's AAA rated versus JP Morgan, or AA rated versus JP Morgan's AAA rating,
I'm not
right?
talking about
Like,
JP, I'm not talking about JP Morgan, I'm talking about call JP Morgan up and say, buy me $300,000 30-day funds, federal funds.
But
That's
I'm
all.
asking a different question, Alan, which is you're basically saying you would rather take federal risk than, I think what Claudia's proposing is AAA risk.
Look, this is going along. You guys have clearly thought about it. I was just coming down here to say
We
that.
have no problem with that.
I'm convinced you guys thought about it, but let me just make real clear. Okay. Two things, having been at St. Mary's, having been at Diocese of New York, where I was chief financial officer, and having been at Navigators Insurance Company, where I was chief financial officer, I well understand how people do not want to get into the question of whether we shift investments. So I'm making it real simple. What you're saying is, I have made the decision to invest in the United States federal government, as opposed to I have made the decision to invest in New York class, who's investing in various things, or JP Morgan. Okay, I'm buying in federal government. And the only question I'm making is whether or not I can make a better total yield by saying, okay, JP Morgan, by X percent, 20%
Right.
in 30 days,
Mhm.
20% in
So,
180 days, and 50% in.
right, so my question would be,
Only question.
no, my question would be, if I may, and if we make those decisions and in 3 months, we look at the results of that, and one of those choices didn't work out great, and one did, who's at fault?
Nobody's in fault.
Us for,
You're.
I'm asking, would the fiduciaries of the village bear any responsibility? And I'll talk to Brian, but would we bear any responsibility for the decisions we made? Now, secondly, would there have to be a debate amongst the trustees on how to blend? In other words, she might want to do JP Morgan. He might want to do another. In other words,
There would have to.
in other words, we're acting now as an investment team. And do we want to do that when we're fiduciaries of taxpayer money?
And we don't have the qualifications to do it.
The only problem that would come up, and what I've just described and
Mhm.
raise your issue, is we go into an inverse yield curve. Okay, so inverse yield curve occurs, and it's occurring right now, is when the short-term interest rate is higher and longer-term interest rate. I don't believe, usually when you talk about inverse yield curves, you're comparing short-term rate to 5 or 10 years, right? I don't believe that there is a significant difference between short-term federal funds and a year out. That's too short. That doesn't hit. Maybe not. Okay, but that's the difference. But you know what? If you, because I don't see, you're buying US securities, government securities, you're saying, I want to layer out my investment over different durations in order to get a better return. And
Or
I don't-
reduce risk.
Alan,
And reduce risk, right? Like, I think,
the risks are the same. And the question is, we don't have a CFO. If we had a CFO, we'd say, it's your decision.
You're a
on how
CFO.
how you structure it. What you're saying is every 30 days or every 60 days, we got to decide if we're going to change the weightings. We don't, just so you know, we got enough to do.
Actually, what you say is, I want this rating, and every 60 days or year, John, make sure it's balanced out. That's
Yeah, but
what you say.
As a taxpayer,
Okay.
you're a taxpayer here.
All right.
I'm a taxpayer.
All right.
Would you have confidence in us delegating that to John?
Yeah.
And would you have confidence in this board or any future board acting as an investment team?
if all your decision is whether to invest in the United States government and how long I want to go out. Now, if you tell me I want to go 30 years out, then that's another
There might
question.
be other people that don't have your skill set that might be very concerned.
So in your policy,
Uh-huh.
you sit there and say, how you want it, what you want to go out. The maximum you go out is a year, the maximum out 5 years.
Would that be subject to change with the next board?
No, it's investment policy.
Policy, renewed.
Well, policies can be changed.
Hey, guys, hey, guys,
I'm asking,
okay, hey,
Questions?
listen, I have battered myself and I really have to go for,
Okay.
Can I
All I'm
just say-
saying,
hold
all
on a
I'm
sec.
saying is this risk, it's got more
Alan,
risk. than you
Alan,
think it is.
sit down a second, just hold
This
on a
is,
second.
I'm gonna
I'm
stand
gonna
up.
say something for 30 seconds,
Stand up.
if I may. One, don't wait. Every month is $12,000 here. All right, so don't wait. And two, your biggest risk here is your counterparty.
Yep.
So trustee Casker had a great idea. Don't put all your money in Bernie Madoff. No, put 10% of your money in Bernie Madoff, because then you got 90%, right?
I
If you
don't
cut
think that's
this,
a reasonable analogy.
if you
No.
cut this
Bernie Madoff
into,
analogy.
if you cut this in 2 or 3 pieces, your counterparty risk will be much less.
That was
That's
already
it.
put into our,
All right.
excuse me,
Thank you.
I'll answer. That was already part of what we decided to do. That at the point when we decided to invest, if the federal government didn't default, we would leave open the possibility of blending it in different ways, possibly not putting 100% in, maybe 50% or 10%. So I agree with you. And that was in our compromise discussion.
But in the discussion from Ellen, right, if you put it into Vanguard, they make the decision about what the extension is. So it is not our decision. No, if you invest the money in Vanguard.
No.
Vanguard has funds. They
Just
have-
like New
they
York
have-
Class.
they
Just like
have a-
Chase, it's
they-
Vanguard.
Chase-
Right.
Vanguard has a 30-day fund. It has a federal fate fund. It has a 90-day fund. And you say, I want.
What are the
10%.
yields on those different
No, no,
funds?
but that's
They're
irrelevant.
different
I don't
from
want to have
interest
to
rate.
make a decision about which fund I'm in every 6 months.
You don't have to.
You don't.
But you know what?
You're investing it in,
Stick with this. It's real simple.
okay.
And just think about counterparties. You have Vanguard counterparty risk, Chase, or
Stick.
Super Prime, whatever they call themselves.
This was fun,
It-
guys.
it-
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you
contributing.
for listening. I'm a high taxpayer here.
Hey, take care.
It's my hard-earned money.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Peace.
Okay, so we have other items on the agenda. I suggest we go to them, table this discussion for 10 minutes while we go through them. Give us all a little breathing room. I'd like to get a water. And we can discuss some of the things that we added onto today's agenda before we have to come back and make a decision here. And those would,
We might be able to get an answer from Brian and the.
I would ask, I would like to call Brian if we can. Anybody have a cell?
Oh, it was gonna be a part of it.
No. Do you have a cell? And what I'm referring to are things that we added onto the agenda after it was published. And those include a discussion on road paving, a resolution confirming authorization of legal counsel to represent the Village of Tuxedo Park in a justice court matter, and a resolution to reauthorize the crime policy for our insurance company. So I ask that we take a 3-minute recess while I go get a water and use the men's room. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 3-minute recess.